my name is Sharon Gardner, and this is my presentation on anime and manga. So what exactly is anime? Anime is the Japanese word for animated design or animation. For our purposes in the US, anime is animation that comes out of Japan. It's available on most streaming platforms, and anime and manga each have genres and subgenres similar to what you'd find in the US, but the ones we're going to talk about are the ones that you don't traditionally think of in the United States. When it comes to manga, manga is a Japanese word which technically means involuntary pictures, but refers to a stylistic note conveyed through the medium. So manga releases in the US are done usually in a physical book or ebook form. They comprise multiple chapters and are usually printed in black and white. So unlike most books in the US, manga is read right to left and back to front. So this isn't an issue for e-readers, but physical copies can confuse people new to manga. And there is a type of manga called doujinshi, or self-created, self-published manga, but we're not going to be covering that because it's not necessarily something that comes through traditional US channels that we order. But we need to know if it's anime or manga. So when we're looking at this slide here, we see an example of anime, manga, and American manga style or fan art. Generally, anime and manga are both products that come from Japan. Stylistically, it's defined as more angular, sharp artwork that's more fantastic than realistic. So if works in the same style are made within the US or another country, it's considered anime style or American manga. So much like fan bases do for their favorite shows or movies, there's always an ongoing argument about whether an American can draw real manga or an LA studio can make real anime. It's kind of similar to the arguments about what movies are really Star Wars canon. The arguments get ugly, and I'm not going to get into the whole where does it come from and is it the real thing. So how are anime and manga related? Anime and manga have a symbiotic cyclical relationship. Essentially, if there's an anime out, there's usually a manga for it. If there's a manga out, there's usually an anime for it. There will be some story differences between the two, but generally the main plot lines are similar between formats, and there's a sort of halo effect when an anime gets a new season, in that it will bump up its related manga sales. Occasionally there will be one without the other in the US, but from a profit standpoint, studios and importers don't find bringing in just anime or just manga viable. One exception has been Studio Ghibli, where the movies do well globally without needing a lot of tie-ins. So here is a super brief historical summary of anime and manga in the US. Generally, we start off in the 1960s with Astro Boy and manga trickling into the US. In the 1970s, we start seeing shows like Speed Racer. Manga starts flowing in at a more steady rate. The 1980s, the movie Akira makes its way onto the scene. In the 1990s, we see Sailor Moon and Pokemon. And at this point, anime and manga are flowing into the US. It's really the first big boom for the market. And with the 2000s going into today, we have shows like JoJo's Bizarre Adventures, and we're seeing a steady stream of content for both anime and manga, especially with the increase in streaming platforms. We're really seeing the market take off. When it comes to anime in North America, it makes up approximately 12.4% of the global market as of 2020, anticipated to grow to 15.5% by 2028. I have a listing of some key global players here, as well as a chart showing the global anime market share by type. Generally, it's merchandising and internet distribution. Those tend to be the biggest areas of growth for anime. When it comes to the North American market for manga, it was just under $250 million US dollars in 2020. What we're seeing is, especially on top-selling lists like adult graphic novels, manga is really starting to dominate a lot of those slots, and anime and online fan communities are always the biggest drivers of manga sales. Alright, let's talk about what's hot in each genre. So the first genre is Kodomo-muke, which is intended for young audiences or children, tends to be really toyetic. So we have Pokemon Journeys, Yokai Watch, so cute animals traveling around. Shoujo is going to be targeted to young females and tends to focus on romantic relationships or emotions. So we have shows like My Next Life is a Villainess, All Routes Lead to Doom, manga such as the Quintessential Quintuplets. Shonen, which is actually the biggest uh, genre for anime and manga in the US, is targeted to young males, tends to focus on action-filled plots, so things like Demon Slayer, My Hero Academia. Josei is targeted to older girls and women. They tend to be slower-paced stories, so we have, for example, Chihaya Furu and Paradise Kiss. Seinen is targeted to older boys, and stories tend to have darker edges, so we have Kaguya, Love is War, and Prison School. Slice of life is focused on the everyday life of its characters, and sometimes these will include exaggerated situations or fantastical elements. For example, Uzaki-chan Wants to Hang Out, or Way of the House Husband. Isekai is a person who's transported to and has to survive in another world. This is another specific subgenre. So, for example, shows like That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime, or manga like So I'm a Spider, So What? And anything from Studio Ghibli, again, it tends to do well, especially for the family market. But what about hentai? Could I accidentally order it from my institution? You can see a ratings chart on the right side of your screen, but generally, hentai is short for hentai seiyukusha, or perverted person. So for North America, hentai is used synonymously with porn as a subgenre. Technically, you can order hentai by accident, but manga and anime is marked with the rating system. But for example, older teens rated content may have some explicit sexual situations, including nudity, but it's not going to be considered hentai. Has it happened? Funimation, which is a major studio that's been in the market for decades, optioned an anime called Interspecies Reviewer, and while it wasn't technically porn, it pushed right up to the line, and the audio actually crossed it. Even though they used censoring, you could still hear everything. There is an article with a wonderful summary, which I will have attached, and generally the rule is, when it comes to anime and manga, when in doubt, check it out. Speaking of companies like Funimation, these are some companies that are bringing in anime and manga to the US. There are obviously more, but this is just a quick summary. So, what should I be looking for when I order this stuff? Classics always cycle in and out of fashion and are usually a safe bet that if you have it, it's going to circulate. I have some anime and manga classics listed here. If you can, try to find 3-in-1 editions that contain multiple volumes within one cover, because they're a little more cost-effective than standalone manga. For example, if you wanted to order One Piece individual volumes, you're going to be ordering 100 volumes as of this year, and that's really not cost-effective. And here are some resources that you can use for collection building, and I will make these available on the handout as well. So, anime and manga are both great sources for inspiration for crafts, trivia contests, art projects, dress-up events, and more. And I have a couple listed here. Things like decorating paper fans, learn a Japanese word of the day, hold haiku contests. You can stream free anime via Crunchyroll. These are all great options. Arigatou gozaimasu. Thank you so much for watching my presentation.